And we're off. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Being Human Hidden Depths. My name is Jill Tiny, and on behalf of Collaboration Global, I would love to say hello to the amazing Riana Avis, one of our fantastic members at Collaboration Global.
Hello, Jill. Thank you for that introduction.
You're very welcome. It's so lovely to have you here, Riana. You are one of our members that have been around for a little while, and you're getting your feet under the table, and you've been an amazing support to what I classify as the dream team. You've become one of our number, our little dream team, because you've been supporting us on creating some amazing courses for our platform. But that's not your day job, obviously. Would you like to first and foremost share how you connected to Collaboration Global and what it was that kind of magnetized you to us as a community? What brought you to us?
Yes, well, it was quite a while ago now, as you said, and it was one of our fellow members, who's still a member, I believe, that invited me and said, just come along. And we had those meetings down in Surrey. We were still living in Surrey in those days, Red Hill. And I went along and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the people that were there. Didn't quite get the ethos, the collaboration bit. And I was just invited back and back and back again until I joined.
Because you were invited back and that you came. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And what I found about and why I continue to keep going back is that it was the kind of conversations we had there was not just how are you, how's your business, how's your family, all the superficial stuff. It really tapped into more of our humanness, who we are and how we show up in the world, and it invited you to be that human, to be that person who you've been hiding.
Yeah.
So, I found it very much a place where I could relax into, I can show my warts and all here, and that would be okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In fact, I do remember one of your early presentations to the room, because obviously we invite our members to present to the guests in the room and obviously the other members. But one of the ones that really impressed me, not from isn't she clever, but impressed upon me because of it had an effect on me. I took it away and I looked up the people you were talking about, and I looked at my life in a different way because of what you had said on that actual presentation. And it was the one about the different levels of emotions that we have. And you spoke about how our thoughts create our emotions and how we have the different levels. And it was like, oh yeah. And all of a sudden it was like, it's so obvious, but at the same time wasn't obvious at all. And everyone talks about feeling depressed, as in it's awful and it's terrible, and then it's joy at the other end. And you very easily and carefully sort of filled in the gaps for us. It was beautiful. Do you want to just tell us how you came upon giving that talk, what it meant to you?
Okay, so that particular talk was my interpretation and my summary, if you like, of Dr. David Hawkins's book called Power versus Force, where he talks about attractors. And I can't remember quite the word he uses, but the way I interpret it is that every emotion has a vibration. We say everything is energy. And if something is of a very low, slow vibration, like in a stone, it's kind of solid.
Yeah.
And apathy and guilt is at that low level. We don't want to do anything. We feel miserable. And so on. And then you go through the layers, and as the energy of each emotion increases. So when you're angry, for instance, it's like, this must change now, and I'm so furious about this, and I'm going to do something. There's more energy, and that often propels us forward. Um, and then you get to a stage where you have to be courageous, which is courage kind of in the middle of this range that he came up with, which is, I don't know, from say 25 to 1,000, you know. And he did all this testing using kinesiology.
Ah, I didn't
Kinesiology.
realize that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another
Yeah.
fascinating subject, isn't it?
Yeah.
Kinesiology.
So courage is, I really want to do something, but I have these fears, and I really want to do something, and I have these fears. But pushing through that, and then you go beyond courage, and then you get to things like willingness and acceptance and love, and right at the top you have what they call awakening, Buddha consciousness, Christ consciousness, and things like that.
Mm.
And so as we feel, our emotions can go up and down that scale, and mostly when we're down below the 200s,
Mm.
we very much operate from the ego level.
Right.
Me. When we go above the courage level, it's more about us. It's more about collaboration. It's more about um, it's more about showing out and showing up rather than everything has to be for me. So it's more of an outward. That's the best way I can describe it. And basically, I've just given you a summary of that talk, I think.
Indeed, exactly. And how interesting that in this day and age, in the age of coronavirus, um, it's being demonstrated straight away, because when we were first kind of being warned that we might have to shut down, the energy and the level and the apathy was kind of, and vitriol as well. There was anger, there was upset, and it was very negative. But now, excuse me, now we are seeing the joy coming through, the good stories, the thanks and the gratitude, and the love that's being poured out for all of these people that are looking after us and helping us, and the collaborations that are happening, and how people are bringing music to the fore, and all the beautiful culture that we have, whether it's poetry being passed around, or music, or all sorts of things that are happening. And although we are going through a roller coaster of emotions in our isolation, at the same time, overall, humanity has come together to be stronger. So you can see how there are many people that are raising the vibration and really working hard to go, come on guys, let's, if you raise the vibration together, then anything can be accomplished. We can get through
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's interesting that that one still stays in my mind, and actually I hadn't even spotted that it was going on around us as we speak. But it is true, when somebody is in grief, as you say, you can't get out of bed. You just feel like everything's too much effort. And when somebody is in pure love, you could climb a mountain, you could do anything. You've got this energy to go with it. So it's amazing, that whole thing. But that isn't what you're known for necessarily within our community. I mean, we kind of would pigeonhole you as a business coach,
Yeah.
and you work quite closely with a specific sector of the SME community. Who is it? Who do you love working with? Who are your best people that you'd be able to help?
Therapists, actually. I love working with therapists, psychotherapists, clinical psychologists. Also, I also want to see orthodontist. No,
Okay. what
occupational therapist.
What took you
Um,
down that road then? Is that your previous experience, or just that you felt you were aligned with them?
well, it happened by default in a way. They always say your niche finds you,
Mm,
or there's that belief that your niche finds you, and maybe this is what happened to me. So when I started my working career, that was in a hospital as a radiographer.
right.
So I very much understand and I'm comfortable around medical terminology and and things like that. So when somebody says occupational therapy, I may not understand the specific ins and outs of it, but enough to
the pressures that they're under.
train. Yes, and the same with um, um, psychologists and psychoanalysts. Um, they have that gentle helpfulness, want to help people about them that I like. I love working with people who are open-minded, big-hearted, and love to help others, because I'm one of those people. And so the fact that I have this paramedical background helps me to bridge some of their world enough so that there's connection. And let's face it, at the end of the day, they're human too, you know.
Absolutely. And I would imagine a lot of them are
Well,
at the front
yeah,
end at the moment, aren't they? They're going to be a lot of people that are in need for their services
yeah.
over the coming weeks. So possibly you're going to be getting very busy. But one of the things that we know you for within our community at Collaboration Global is how to have difficult conversations. And again, sometimes these things that you get known for spring from the strangest places. So I was wondering whether there was a difficult conversation that you handled particularly well and you thought, oh, I'm good at this, or whether you learnt about it and then you went off and tackled some difficult conversations. What was the how did that kind of draw you in and attract you to be known for difficult conversations?
Well, one of my first difficult conversations has always been with my stepmom.
Oh, yeah.
She had the
Some people
conversation.
resonate with that.
She had the conversation, and I was the one who didn't say anything. So I was the passive person there, and didn't know quite how to respond. Because I don't know about you, but when people go blah 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 at me, I go blank.
Yep.
I literally go blank.
Feeling.
And then then I was in IT, project managing things and process, or all sorts of stuff like that, and very much into the project management side of things. And I came across a book called Crucial Conversations.
Right.
And I bought the book because at the meeting where this was presented for a group, a project management significant interest group or something like that, it's called SIG. They were saying that there are reasons why projects go off in different at tangents, not meeting the budget, not the client,
Well, they can find a million things to blame, can't they?
Absolutely. And then there's these conversations to have, and if you have them well, then your project would be better. So I was, gimme. And so I went on the course, and I actually wanted to train as well. So I did that as well. And at the same time, I had someone in my life. It was my son, actually. And we were clashing a lot. So I used the principles of Crucial Conversations to have those conversations with him and healed our relationship.
Oh, wow.
With it.
It's that powerful.
It's that powerful, yes.
I can identify with what you say, because for many years I would be the passive person as well. And when somebody was kind of talking at me, in my head, I'm disagreeing with them vehemently. But I quite often couldn't be bothered when somebody was being aggressive. I couldn't be bothered to kind of reach above them and top the conversation and try and shout them down or yell at them, or it wasn't in me. So I would passively listen and kind of agree to disagree, but they would then take it that I was in agreement. They would, that was their way of kind of, oh well, she didn't say no, so she must agree. And then quite often it would come back later and well, you said it was that. I said, no, I didn't actually. Think about it. I never actually said that. So in order for me to remain calm, I kind of went down that, let's put a shield up in front of me. And I thought it was the best way forward because I thought it was protecting myself. But in reality, what you do is you just take on the energy of negativity, and it kind of absorbs into your body, and it's inside you. And that person disappears and goes off and does their own thing, and you're still stuck with that negativity that kind of goes around and around and around. And you're sitting there going, I should have said this, and why didn't I say that? And that would have been a good comeback. And it's just eating away at you. So once you understand kind of some of the ways of having those conversations, you don't have to yell, and you don't have to get on top of them, and you don't have to be aggressive back, but you can be assertive and empowered to make sure that they understand what you're thinking, because they can't read your mind. They have to be given some clue. So what would you say, if somebody is experiencing a difficult conversation that maybe they're not even having yet, and they're too scared, and they're kind of holding off thinking, oh, it'll go away eventually, do I need to say, and they're stopping living part of their lives, especially now when people are in lockdown and they're with people that are just, irritating them or annoying them, or downright, potentially fear in that space, because they're living with people that are aggressive and are not listening to what they're saying. What would you give them as some tools that they could use to tackle some of these conversations?
First of all, couple of things that's going through my mind here. A lot of the handling a difficult conversation better is not so much about what we say, it's more about how we think.
Right.
So I always say 70% of it is what you're thinking, and the 30% is what you're doing.
Right.
So you really need to say, how important is this? I mean, some people go off at a tangent, having a field day, having a shot at somebody, having a difficult conversation on something that's actually not important at all. So how important is it that you have that conversation and how do you want to feel about this person? How do you feel about this relationship? How important is the relationship? Do you just want to feel good right now, or in 3 months' time, in 6 months' time, do you still want to have this relationship? Do you want to have it a stronger relationship? And then you have to start thinking about, and what do I want for myself? So getting very clear on why you're having this conversation and what you want out of it. Start with the end in mind, as they say.
Yeah. I had a situation once with a good friend, and we got to the stage of the disagreement had gone on, and we got to the stage of, I was ready to let the relationship go and let it go, but she didn't. She hung on, and she came back and she said, look, this isn't working for me. I can't stand this. I need you in my life. Can we at least agree to disagree? So I did. And I could have had this grudge going on and on and on, but I just totally let it go because the friendship was more important. Even though the thing that had happened had been quite profound at the time and had been very upsetting, because it was to do with my children, because we're very protective of our kids. So it was quite a big thing for me to go, do you know what, I'm just going to let it go. So we have had the most incredible friendship before and since, and we would now consider each other family. My mum and dad are both dead. Alan's mum and dad are dead. We do not have a big family. We're very tiny. So they have adopted us, basically. Her family have adopted us and vice versa. And a little while ago, our kids, we were talking generally about having arguments, and one of our kids said, well, have you two ever had an argument? And I was like, no, because it was in my head that we'd had the argument, but I just let it go. And she went, oh no, we did have a big one. It was very big. Oh, it's massive. And they're like, oh, what was it about? What happened? And I was like, oh, I can't remember. I was choosing to let it go. And she went, oh, I can remember. I was like, oh God, this is getting awkward. So they're like, what was it, Mum? What was it? And I said, well, you tell the story. So this lady told the story, and I said, that's not quite how I remember it. And so she said, well, how do you remember it? So I told her how I remembered it. and she sat there sobbing because her version of what had happened and my version of what had happened were totally different. And what it was, the situation she had been in at the time, she hadn't seen it from my point of view. But now, like literally 20 years later, she could see clearly what had happened, and she was beside herself with, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize, I had no idea, I thought you were talking about that, but you were talking about that, and oh my god, this is awful. And we were hugging, and it was beautiful reconciliation, all the rest of it. But I didn't need that because I'd moved on, and I could have stuck my heels in and gone, no, I'm not going to keep this friendship, it's gone, because of that incident. But I chose to keep the friendship, and fortunately it's one of my best friendships ever, you know. And it worked really, really well. But it's interesting how what we thought was a black and white situation, that, well, she thinks that, and if she thinks I'm going to do that, well, I'm never going to. And it was so damaging at the time, but we
Yeah.
realized that the friendship was more important than anything else, and we managed to solve it. And ironically, 20 years later, it was our kids that brought us back together.
Yeah.
But
And I would
we were
say,
apart at that point, but yeah.
yeah, I would say it was probably not 100% resolved at the time, even though you decided to park it.
Definitely
Yeah.
wasn't. No, I'd chosen to let it go. It wasn't resolved
Yeah.
at all,
Yeah.
because we were getting nowhere. We had tried and tried and tried, and we were just
Yeah.
stalemate. And we
Yeah.
were both angry with the situations, but
Yeah. Mm.
we weren't listening to each other, obviously, at that point. But we chose to go, all right, let's agree to disagree. I don't
So, yeah.
agree with what you're saying, and you don't agree with what I'm saying, but the friendship is more important. So we moved on.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one way to handle it. But yeah, it brings me very nicely to the second point is, we are so attached to, I'm right, you are wrong.
Mm.
I'm right, you are wrong. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. No, I'm right. And it's, if
Yeah.
we can just let go of, there's another way that we can look at this.
Mm.
Why would a normal, reasonable person, and in our minds at that moment, they're not normal and reasonable, and I get that. Why would they behave this way?
Yeah.
Because right now they're stressed out because of coronavirus. Where's the money going to come from? How are they going to get their job done when they have to teach the children at the same time? Whatever it is, and you only have to open that door a degree about why might they be behaving like that.
Mm.
That gives you a little different perspective, and then you're open to, then they can come in with saying what's going on for them.
Mm.
And a very difficult question to ask yourself is, how am I contributing to this situation?
Mm.
So in my conversation with my son, for instance, it was about money, and it was about, you're not managing your money properly. You're always coming to ask me for money, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it was, so, I want to talk to you about your money, and how are you managing this month, and have you paid so and so because you borrowed from them? And I was always on the attack.
Yeah.
I was treating him like a child.
Mm. How old
And
was he at this point?
he was 21, 22.
Big enough to know better, yeah. So
Yeah.
were you upset with him? Was it disappointing to you?
Yeah, yeah. What when your child behaves, this is the way for me, your child behaves in a way you think, I didn't bring them up like that. I didn't teach them that. It's like, how dare you do that to me?
You're thinking it's reflecting badly on you. And also, what I find very interesting is that we very easily revert. You're talking to another adult, but you revert back into the mother-child role, and you treat them like
Absolutely.
they're 8 years old. And
Exactly.
yeah,
But it was only when I asked myself this question about how am I contributing to it, and you have to like, oh, of course I'm not contributing to it. I'm not making it any, it's his fault. Da 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 da. And but when you can just let it sink in, and think about how are you contributing, and then it hit me. I was treating him like a child.
mm-hmm.
Actually, he's an adult now. if he can't handle his money, it's his problem. Don't make it mine. And um, so when I went to him and I said to him, I want to talk to you about money, and he says, I'm out of here, you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
because I've I've had enough of you moaning. He didn't say that, obviously, but you get the sense of it.
Mm.
And I said, but I want to apologize for the way I treated you.
Wow.
And then he was like all ears.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we sat down at the table and I explained how I saw the situation and what how I really wanted our relationship to be, and that I'm sorry I treated him that way, and you know it's he's the master of his life,
Mm.
um, and we cried and we hugged, and you know things have been okay since, and that was more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
um, so just being willing to ask the question, you know, how am I contributing? Why is this person behaving the way they're behaving?
And I guess we have to acknowledge that we are definitely contributing in some way. As much as your whole being is going, I'm not, it's his fault. He can't, yeah, absolutely. I'm not spending the money for him. He's spending the money. But actually the situation between the two of you, the reason there's friction is we are all, whatever difficult conversations we have to have, we are contributing. That's a really powerful question, isn't it, to ask?
Mm.
What are you contributing? So if you're in denial that you're contributing, and that's half the problem, isn't it? And once you accept that, yeah, maybe, and if you're willing to go and apologize for what you're contributing, then that just takes the whole sting out of the tail, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Just
But that's a lot of, sorry to interrupt, that's a lot of thinking process that goes on before you get to the point of apologizing.
mm,
So I was at a show, I think it was called the Divorce Show or something,
wow.
and I had a stand there about, you know, it was about difficult conversations, because when you're going through a separation like that, there's 120 plus difficult conversations to have.
Mm,
And one lady walked up to me and she said, she talked to me about difficult conversations. And I told her a little bit about how I handled my relationship with my son and the conversation. And she said, what did you do? And I said, I apologize. And
mm,
she was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing, no, no, no. And she was not interested. And it took me a long time to realize why.
okay.
Because you have to kind of go through that journey of thinking about things differently.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't done that reflection, you know, what is it that I want for this relationship? What do I want for myself? What do I want for this person? How did I contribute? Why might they be behaving that way? How can I look at this differently?
Mm,
Um, you know, if you've not been through that, um, then you're not going to get to the next natural um, uh, step that you can take to
yeah.
make things better.
Yeah, that's kind of I mean, I've seen this within our community when people have been talking kind of en masse within in the room, and somebody might have said, "Oh yeah, I don't talk to my dad," and you can feel people in the room kind of go, "Ooh, it's like, oh, that hurts, you know, it's painful." And then, don't talk to me about it. No, it's fine, it's fine. I've got used to it. It's okay. I've sorted it. I've got my head around it. It's fine. And we're all sitting there going, not really fine, is it though?
No.
And then what happened at this particular incident, that at the end of the meeting, when we were having a little sum up and we were saying what we'd got from it, I would say 80% of the room said to this person, pick the phone up to your dad, just make a call. And he's like, oh, I'm fine, it's okay. But that was the beginning of him going, but what if I did? He's then,
Yes.
because he had seen so many people who are in a community who are allowed to challenge you, because we're in a safe space.
Mm.
We're allowed to be vulnerable and go, I don't know the answer. We're surrounding you with love. So we're saying things not from a point of view of like, what are you doing, the idiot? You know, why aren't you making a phone call, calling stuff? There's no admonishing about saying things. It's like, there's no right or wrong. It's just like, why don't you pick the phone up? If you could, you know, why don't you? you're missing out because that relationship needs to be repaired. Doesn't mean to say you have to see that person every day, but the person that brought you into the world needs to be acknowledged on occasion, whether it's Christmas or birthday or whatever. And so what I've seen more than once is people that thought it was okay in their life, they'd come to accept that we're not talking, and that lack of communication and that breakdown in that relationship, whatever relationship it happens to be, and they've made themselves okay with it, but actually in the pit of their stomach, in the far reaches of their heart, they're not okay with it. And by having loving people around you going, well, do you want to talk about it? And then being able to ask some of those questions that you've mentioned, it really, it supports them so that they're in that space where it's like, oh, all right then. Cool. And it's like begrudgingly, but really they know that we're doing them a favor by kind of nudging them in the right direction. But it's all done with this overarching love for them to have the best in their life and for them to be the best that they can be. And if you're trying to be the best you can be, and you've got a little corner in, you know, that skeleton in the cupboard that you're scared to get out and you can't deal with it, and you've got a relationship that needs to be repaired, then it's the best place to be when other people can support you through that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one of the things you mentioned, I mean, obviously the conversation you had with your son was about money. Ooh, it's a very emotive subject, isn't it? I can understand how people get very scared around that conversation. I had a friend once who had a stack of envelopes because she knew she had a problem with money, and anything that came through the door, she wouldn't open it. She would just hide it, because obviously if you hide it, then you don't owe the bank any money and you don't owe any interest on your credit card because it's hidden. You just can't see it, and that's okay. But you know, obviously the angst that was going on and on and on, eventually she asked for some help. So do you come across difficult conversations that people are kind of holding back? And if money is one of them, what do you find? Is there any common denominators? Is there anything? So if somebody's listening to this conversation now and they're like, oh yeah, I've got a problem with money, and you kind of admit it to yourself, but you don't want to admit it to other people, what sort of things might they be able to do to help them along their way so they can be free of this angst that is part of that money conversation?
Well, I think the first thing is, as you say, admit that there is a problem and that something needs to be done about it. So that's kind of having a difficult conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
You know. So and then if you need help, to then ask for the help, because sometimes when you're stuck in a money situation and it's like, I don't know what to do here, there's shame and embarrassment around that also makes it difficult for people to ask for help. And the longer you put it off, the worse the situation is going to get. And there's lots of places on the internet where you can find help, for instance. And I'm not sure if this is where you were kind of leading with this question, but there's the money saving website, you know, the money expert website. I can't remember off the top of my head now. And there's a charity about for people who have money difficulties. You have to be careful though, because often when you go and ask for help with people who will restructure debt and things like that, they might restructure it so it favors them, not the person in trouble. So you have to be very careful. So the best thing really is to talk to somebody who can help you get your head around that, and to start practicing simple money management practices. You know, was it Mr. Micawber in Charles Dickens's?
Yes,
Copperfield, I think.
Okay, yes, I think that or Bleak House, one or the other.
Yes, and it's like, you know, you spend, in those days it was pounds and shillings, so you earn £20 and you spend £20 1 shilling, and it's a nightmare, because you spend more than you earn.
Yeah.
But you spend $19 or £19, and then you have £1 left over. It's heaven because you're not in debt, and then you can start working from that. So yeah, there's lots of help out there, and um, I recently did a course like that for my clients as well, because I pick up from when they talk about money. I may mention something like, so when last have you increased your prices
Mm.
on your packaging, and you hear the sharp intake of
Yeah. About 5 years ago.
you
Yeah.
know, or they're uncomfortable with having the sales conversation. So you're providing a service. If you
Mm.
don't provide the service, how, if you don't do marketing, and I'm talking to myself here as well, how do people know that you can help them?
Mm.
So yeah,
It's
so
interesting. Yeah, especially as you say, amongst business owners. So if you run a business out there and you're not sure how to charge, somebody once said to me, if you draw a line on a page and you put down £50,000 at one end and you put zero at the other, well, your charge for what is right is somewhere in between. And we usually go with what we feel is right. There is no right price for anything, and some people go, oh well, I'm worth £40,000 for
yeah,
half a day or something, and you go, really, maybe, and then you go, what, am I worth £10? Yeah, I'm definitely worth more than £10. Okay, and you kind of eventually you come to the middle ground where you can go, yeah, that's a nice number, because that means
yeah,
I get a decent living, but what I'm doing and what I'm charging for creates an amazing impact on the
yeah,
person that's receiving
exactly,
it,
yeah,
and it can transform their life. I heard one lady say that she was either going to let people choose how much they paid her, or she was going to charge them £50. And she was a life coach. So she told me some of the stories that how she'd help people. And they were incredible stories of just, people that were, stuck indoors and agoraphobic, and she'd release them from that. Different stories about how she'd change people in the workplace and just transform their lives. And I said, so you potentially are saving people's lives, because if they'd carried on going down a downward spiral, who knows where they'd have ended up. I said, I pay someone £50 to clean my oven, and I get a clean oven. But you potentially can
mm,
transform their life. Don't you think it's worth a bit more than £50? And it's that dilemma that a lot of people will work for nothing because they just want to help people. But if they're
yes,
not going to be sustainable for themselves, they're
mm,
not helping anybody, because if they can't sustain it, then they have to go and get a job, and they can't even help anybody because they're doing
yeah,
something that's not what they want to do.
yeah,
So understanding what your worth is a very empowering concept, because once you know that, you earn enough money, and then sure, go off and do some pro bono stuff, because you've got enough income coming in for the people that can afford you.
yeah, yeah.
And
But
that,
yeah,
sorry.
coming back to difficult conversations around money, right now with this coronavirus thing, where we seem to, lots of people their income have lost their income. They
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
um, they have to budget much more tightly if they budget, even if they, if that's the sort of thing that they do. Um, but just having that conversation about with your partner or even with yourself to say, right now things are tight out there, and I have to look after what I have. To make it stretch further, what are we going to do? What am I going to do if you're on your own? And
Mm,
there are things one can do. There are things one can do.
mm,
But that's a conversation that could be difficult to have if you have to sit down with somebody and say, so how are we going to manage this
mm,
going forward?
mm.
You know, where are we going to cut down? It's so easy uh, for if there's a couple situation and one person
Oh yeah.
spends more than the other, to say, oh, everything will be fine. I'm just going to get this now because I can still order stuff online, and the other person is, no, we're not going to do that. And it's, oh, you always stopping me from doing stuff. And
Mm.
it, having that conversation can be very, very tricky.
Yeah.
And you have to get over that. It's not about how are we going to do this together. It's not about one person stopping the other one. It's
Mm.
not about one person saying, I have to have my little way and I have to spend money, otherwise who am I?
Yes.
Are not about how much you spend, number one, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so that could be quite tricky. And you can't come to the conversation already emotional.
No. No.
Yeah.
100%.
You have to come with a fact.
Mm.
So crucial conversations actually teach us a lovely way um, about how you can approach the conversation. So they call it the state. It's the state rule. I'll call it the state rule. So share the facts. What's going on right now? We're spending this much on food. We have to spend. This is where the money's going. This is how much is coming in. Those are facts.
Yeah.
How do you feel about them? So tell your story.
Mm.
Um, my story is I'm very scared now because we don't have the money coming in to pay XYZ, and we don't know when the government is going to pay out the money that they promised.
Yeah.
And the other one may be, the other one's story might be, oh, I can't possibly live without whatever it is I need to have in order to have a life.
Mm.
Um, or whatever that story might be.
Mm.
Or, I feel like you controlling me when you say I can't spend there. That's a story
Yeah.
that we tell ourselves.
Yeah.
And then A is for ask. Ask the other person. Um, this is how I understand it. How do you see it? So, for instance, when you were with your friend, um, and it took years and years and years for you to resolve things. She
Mm.
had her story, you had your story, you saw it one way, she saw it another way. But it was only when your children said what happened that you heard the other person's version.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
when there's a difficult conversation going on, you need to give each other space in that conversation to say, how do you see it? You know?
Mm. Mm. And it's taking that sting out of it, isn't it? Because we've
Yeah.
been brought up in this environment of right and wrong and being seen to be right. You're less of a person if somebody proves you wrong and you have to go, oh yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Oh, I didn't see it like that.
Yeah.
People don't back down generally, I find.
Yeah.
Uh,
No.
it's really interesting.
Yes. And that's and when somebody is really forceful,
Yes.
the other person is going to become passive. They're going to go away, or maybe they're going to come back and shout, and then you're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so things get emotional, for sure. Then you just say it's too much for me right now, and back off and
Mm.
make another time.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So we've got STA. What are the T and the E? The last of the state.
Yeah. So the second, the last T is tentative. So speak tentatively.
Right.
So when you ask somebody, so Jill, tell me, how do you feel about this situation? Have I got it right? Because I'm seeing you do this and that and the other, and I'm thinking, gosh, what is Jill trying to do? She's making me feel like this and that and the other.
Mm.
And I probably should come up with a better example there.
I get,
um,
yeah.
yeah, you get the drift. But
It's
if
again, it's taking the aggression out of it, taking the sting out of it by coming gently to the
yeah,
conversation. I think
yeah,
tentative is a really good.
yeah,
That will stick in the front of your. Am I being tentative this moment? No, I'm getting really quite angry. So you have to back off and should we start this again tomorrow? Let's have another go tomorrow.
yeah. And what does the E stand for?
Uh,
Encourage. Encourage the other person
Ah, nice.
Speak, but gently. It's not just, when you speak to somebody and they stop. You've asked them a question and then they silent.
Mm.
And in that silence, they are thinking. But
Mm.
we want them to answer now, immediately. Speak to me.
Yeah.
And then when we speak and we say, "Come on, tell me."
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? It's like, I don't know what I think. I haven't had time to think. I need
Yes,
time to think.
yeah. So be encouraging, but also give them the space to think,
Mm.
um, and watch. People say a lot more gets said in the silence between words
Gosh, yeah. Yeah.
than the words itself.
Yeah.
So, watching the other person and keeping it safe for you and for them to be in the conversation is
Mm.
very, very important.
Without misreading the situation, because if you're coming to it from an agitated, upset state, and somebody's quiet while they're thinking about what's going on, you might misinterpret the non-verbal conversation as they're ignoring me, they're thinking of how they can one-upmanship me, and and it's like if you're adding your story to it, you don't
Yes.
know what they're thinking, but just
No.
allow them to be. it's
Yes.
it's a
Yeah.
very you're giving them that space to
Yeah.
to work it all out and meet you halfway. So you're meeting them halfway and you're giving them the space to kind of meet you the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's such a mature person. If you've been part of a conflict, the the easiest thing in the world is to walk away and go, right, that's it, I've had enough. But the mature thing is to come together to kind of complete the conversation and solve it. But to offer those things that you've said is be tentative and be encouraging when you're actually internally you're still quite angry about the whole thing. It's quite a
Yeah.
mature person that is able to come to it, because as you said at the very beginning, you have to look at the whole relationship. Do I want to save this relationship? Do I want to make it a better relationship? Do I want to put the effort in,
Yeah.
get it back to where it was, or make it an even better place? Because when it's exactly the same in collaboration, when you've got a group of people that have come together for a project, or they're working together as a group in a business, and they're collaborating and one of them upsets the others,
Mm.
well, you have to think of the greater good, and the greater good means you have to find a way through, and the way through is to be encouraging, to state the facts, to be tentative in the conversation, and to be the bigger person. That doesn't mean to say, oh, I'm wrong and you're right and you've got,
No.
that's not the
No.
case. It's just coming to a solution together, but without the aggression, without the ego, without that
Exactly.
kind of horrible feeling of one-upmanship,
Yeah.
which, we're two ladies sitting here talking. I think women have as much ego as men sometimes, that, they can't leave it at the door and just be
Mm.
open with each other.
Yeah.
One of the things I used to find when I was younger, I used to work for a housing department, and people were very angry all the time because obviously they couldn't, the tenants were angry because they couldn't get what they wanted, or the management was angry because they were spending too much money, or the councillors were angry because the tenants were having a go, whatever. Everybody was quite angry. So you're going into a conflict situation all the time. And what I found the easiest way to deal with it is it's like, let me see it from your side. So I would be like, oh yeah, that must be really horrible. Oh, I get where you're coming from. Do you know what, I'm not sure if I can help you, but let me see what I can do. And I would kind of be so kind, like this phrase I gave to my kids as well, be so kind that their ears bleed. It's like, you cannot be kinder. And it's really hard to be angry with someone when they're just being really, really nice to you. It's
Yes.
like you're trying
Yeah.
so hard to understand it from your point of view that eventually they can't keep it going. The anger just dissipates, and then you get like, oh, I'm not really having a go at you. I'm just so upset, and this is, it's really got to me, and I really don't know where to go. Okay,
Yes.
let's see how we can sort this out then. And then together you're on a different level. Before you were like this, and somebody was having a go at you, but all of a sudden you're like this.
Yes.
You can't see my hands. I'm a very visual person, but there are two different levels. And if somebody's kind of above you on this level of anger and they're trying to suppress you with aggression, you just
Yes.
get squashed. And if you're trying to fight back, it's just like, two immovable objects not getting anywhere. But the minute you go, you're empathizing with their situation. You must be so upset. I get how it must feel. I'm really sorry that you're in this situation. If I could do anything, what could I do to help you? How can I help? And it's exactly the same with your son, going in that scenario. It's like he's driving you up the wall. He's always in debt. It's like, hey son, I get that this is frustrating for me. Let me tell you how I feel. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm upset that you're not in control of this. Can't work out why, but how can I help you? What would make it better for you? Is it just for me to ignore it and let you fall on your face and work it out for yourself? Or can I sit down next to you and work out how, a budget, or what can I do? But the minute you come in with aggression, then there's a defense, and then already you've got a barrier that's difficult to overcome.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we can talk about when you have this difficult conversation, aim for a learning conversation. What's going on here? What am I not getting? What's the truth? What is the problem here that we can solve together? What bit am I not getting? Help me understand. And in that, we strengthen the relationship. But so those kind of things are all productive goals, but when we come to this conversation and we're angry and we want to be right and we have to look good and we have to win and we want to punish because how dare this person behave like this, or we want to blame because, whatever they did was not right in your opinion, or sometimes simply because we want to avoid conflict. You were talking about when you're being shouted at or being approached in a very aggressive way, and then you go away and you just be quiet and passive because you don't know how to come back. That's avoiding conflict,
Yes.
And in the short term, it's actually not good.
No.
Because when you want to be right and you want to look good and you have that aggression in you, there's a lot of adrenaline. I forget the specific cortisol, I think it is. It's called. Those things are not good for your body.
No.
Not good for your body at all.
Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
So, being able to have a mature conversation where you can think these things through, approach the other person, have a conversation, and maybe sometimes you have to have several conversations to clear the air. It's just much more calming. You don't hold that energy of anger and frustration in your body. It's much healthier for your body.
I would imagine that a lot of your clients that have gone through this process with you, if they had been prone to migraines or upset stomach, or once they've kind of got rid of the conflict in their life, it must, as you say, your body is going to suffer if you're holding all this anger in. So there must be those kind of lovely repercussions that you no longer have irritable bowel syndrome, no longer have these horrendous migraines that took you out for a couple of days, because you're not holding into that tension and that negativity. And again, it comes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning, the vibration of the emotion that you're feeling, and you want to raise that vibration to feel in a better space. So to get that conversation sorted and done allows you to be free, allows you to be empowered.
Yeah, but it does take courage, and I'm not going to take credit for anybody who's dropped a migraine because I've helped them have a difficult conversation.
But it may be.
Yet. But I know enough of bodies functioning and how a body operates, and what things like adrenaline can do to a body, to understand that if you can get good at having a productive conversation and work your way through this, number one, you're going to have less stress in your life because you're going to see this coming and you can stop it before it gets there.
Yeah.
Less stress in your life,
Lovely.
So, yes.
I
I
think
think.
that's what we all want at this time. I mean, there must be so many people that are isolating at home with their families, that maybe their partner isn't the one they thought they married, or their kids are not as cute as they thought they were. It's just, and the stress levels are like through the roof.
Mm.
Understanding how to have these conversations, they
Yes.
could
Yeah.
do well out of that. So thank you, Rihanna. I think that's come to a lovely, full-rounded conclusion from our conversation, to understand how easy, as I say, you need courage to have these conversations, but actually it's not so difficult as maybe you would think, because when you don't know the end result that you're aiming for, and you just go, I need to have a conversation with you, and it's going to be angsty, then you know it's going to be really hard to have a good outcome. But when you follow some of those rules, if you remember the state that you're going to be in order to have a good conversation, that's,
Yeah.
and I'm sure if people wanted to know more, they can come and find you as well on the Collaboration Global platform where you hang
Absolutely.
out, or indeed on our Facebook group, which is called Being Human. You hang out there as well. What's the easiest way for us to contact you, though, Rihanna? If somebody wants to continue this conversation, a positive conversation, maybe to support them in having that difficult conversation with someone that they need to, what's the easiest way for people to contact you?
Probably via my website. There's a contact form on there, www.rianaavis.com. So that's RIANAAVIS.com.
Lovely.
And just
Brilliant.
get in touch that way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for explaining that to us, because it is something that we've all experienced, and that every single person I know go, oh, I don't like conflict. Well, nobody does.
No,
But when
nobody.
some people can help you to kind of circumnavigate and find a way through, and find a healthy way through, I
Yes.
think what you've offered us today is just a soupçon of what you do. And also, coming shortly on the platform as well, there will be some courses that you've put together that people can access you around the money conversation. And I'm sure there'll be many other things on there as well that they can find out about you. So thank you again for being our guest on Being Human, Hidden Depths. It's been really exciting to find out how you tackle those conversations, and lovely to have you with me today. Thank you very much for joining us today, Rihanna.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill.
It's
See you
been
again.
lovely. Thank you very much. See you next time, everybody. Bye.